All right, hello again, Jeff Scott of Blackhawk Technical College. With the last of my 17 lectures, I guess I combined 1, 2, and 3, so whatever that would be, 15 lectures for chapters 1 through 17 of iOS 9 App Development Essentials for the spring 2016 semester, and the class is 152, 153, Mobile Web Development iOS. I'm now going to go over Chapter 16, where, as the authors say, in this chapter, we will work through a detailed example intended to demonstrate the view-controller relationship together with the implementation of the target action pattern. So this really isn't anything harder than any program we've ever done in the last semester, and by all means, it's a lot easier than the bullseye one that we did. So I will come back to the PDF only on an as-needed basis. But other than that, I will almost be going strictly from just Xcode. So let's do this. Let's do a file, save, and a file, close, playground. Okay, so I want to keep up in Xcode here. Didn't tell it to close Xcode. So it says the purpose of this application we're going to create is to perform unit conversions from Fahrenheit to centigrade. All right, so I'm going to create a new Xcode project as we're told to do. When it comes up, we're told to make this a single view application, so I will do that, and that's of course our default anyway. I click next. They tell us to call this unit converter. Keep the organization Blackhawk, edu.blackhawk.jscott, Swift, and they tell us to make this a universal. So everything looks good on there. I click next. And we'll just save it out to the desktop, which is where it is anyway. All right. So I'm on the bottom of page 117. Before we can begin developing the logic for our interactive application, we're going to start by designing the user interface. When we created the new project, Xcode generated a storyboard file for us. You already know this. It's our main.storyboard. It is within this file that we will create our user interface, so select this file from the project navigator and load it into the interface builder. Again, I'm just following the steps. I've just turned to page 118. The chapter itself is about 7 or 8 pages long. All right. And I don't think I'm going to need my navigator pane for now, so I'm going to give myself some more room. There we go. All right. From the object library, drag a text field out and position it pretty much as shown in figure 16.2. So we want a text field from here. There it is. Drag it out and put it somewhere up here. Looks like it's about right where they show it to be. All right, within the Attributes Inspector panel, type the words enter temperature into the placeholder text field. All right, so right in here, but I think we want to make this a little bit wider or else it won't hold all that. So let's about double the size that it was. And let's make sure it's still pretty centered there. That looks pretty good. Might still have to be made a little bit bigger. In fact, let's make it a little bit bigger than we just did. So there, there. All right. So come over to the Attributes Inspector. And in our placeholder text, they want us to put in here, enter temperature. All right, so that is now in our placeholder. Since only numbers and decimal points will be required to be input for the temperature, locate the keyboard property in the Attributes Inspector and change the setting to numbers and punctuation. Let's see, there's keyboard type, numbers and punctuation. So we've got all that done. Now that we've added the text field, the user will enter his or her temperature. The next step is to add a button object, which may be pressed to initiate the conversion. To achieve this, drag and drop a button onto the view. Double-click it and change in the edit mode, change it to convert. Select the button and drag it beneath the text field until the blue dotted line appears, indicating that it's horizontally centered in relation to the containing view before releasing the mouse button. All right, so we want to come down here and put a button underneath this. Looks about right. Then they want us to double click on that and put the word convert in there. Okay, let's make sure it still is centered. Okay, there it is. Looks like the button, that's big enough. It could be a little bit bigger, so let's make it just a tad bigger on each side. Okay. Finally, select the button and drag it beneath. Yeah, we did that. The last user face object that we'll need is a label where the result of the conversion will be displayed. All right. So we want a label underneath this. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually move this up a tad. I want to make sure we have plenty of room in here for our keyboard. So I'll come over to label here, grab that label, drag that up about the same, and I'm going to make this, they say about a third of the way, so I'll make it about the same size as the text field that I put in. There we go. All right. Modify the alignment property for the label so that the text is centered. All right. We may also want to make this a little bigger later, so I'm just going to actually widen it out a bit there also. Okay. Now, what they want us to do is to remove the text that's in here. And you may have heard me say this before in other classes. I don't like to do that. I like to always be able to see it. I know that there's other ways we can see it, but I'm just going to leave it where it is. All right, bottom of page 118. In order for the user interface design layout to adapt to many different device orientations and iPad and iPhone screen sizes, it will be necessary to add some auto layout constraints to the views in the storyboard. Now, please remember that auto layout is going to be covered in detail in chapters 18 through 24. So we're going to have 7 chapters of auto layout. But it says for the purposes of this example, we'll request that the interface builder add what it considers to be appropriate constraints for this layout. All right. So it says in the lower right-hand corner of the interface builder panel is a toolbar. And that's down here. I can't move it, so you have to take a look at where I'm moving the cursor around. Click on the background view of the current scene and click the Resolve Auto Layout. So click here and then click where it says, one of these says Resolve Auto Layout. And that's the last one here. From the menu, select the Reset to Suggested Constraints under the All Views. All right. And it says, at this point, the interface design for our project is complete, and the view should appear as illustrated in Figure 16.5. So you can see my view right here, and if we go over to Figure 16.5, that's their view. Okay? Is it perfect? By all means, no. But it's a start. All right? Now, they tell you that you can build and run the application. I don't feel the need to do that. We've done this kind of thing before. So, all right. Bottom of page 119 and going on to pages 120, 121, 22, and 23. Adding actions and outlets. When the user enters a temperature value into the text field and then clicks the convert button, we need to trigger an action that will perform a calculation to convert the temperature. The result of that calculation will then be presented to the user via the label object. The action will be in the form of a method which we will declare and implement in our view controller class. Access the text field and label objects. Access to the text field and label objects from the view controller will be implemented through the use of outlets. All right. Before we begin, now is a good time to highlight an example of the use of subclassing. The UI Kit framework contains a class called UI View Controller. This class provides the basic foundation for adding view controllers to an application. In order to create a functional application, however, we will inevitably need to add functionality specific to our application to this generic view controller class. This is achieved by subclassing the view controller class and extending it with the additional necessary functionality. When we created our new project, Xcode anticipated our needs, so it created a subclass of UI View Controller. It named it View Controller, and it actually is in our file that's called viewcontroller.swift. So if I bring back up the navigation pane, there's our viewcontroller.swift file. And then they say if you bring that up right now, well, I'll do that, but I'll tell you what, I'll bring it up, but I'm going to bring up the assistant editor so I can run that and keep what I had in here. So there it is. So it pretty much looks the same way that you see in the middle of page 120. As you can see from this code, a new class named ViewController has been created. This class is a subclass of the UI View Controller class belonging to the UI Kit framework. The next step is to extend the subclass to include the two outlets and our action methods. This could be achieved manually by declaring the outlets and actions within the viewcontroller.swift file. But as we already know, there is an easier way of doing this. So I'm going to do it the way that's suggested in the book. Again, I don't think I need that. And I can take my file here, knock it down in size, and I also, for right now, I don't think I need the object pane. So I can put everything there. Now you can see the entire, my entire program is shown in here right now. All right, both the UI and the associated code so far. So I brought up the assistant editor, as they mentioned, on the bottom of page 120 and the top of page 121. So those have both been done. All right. Make sure the viewcontroller.swift file is displayed in the assistant editor and establish an outlet for the text field by control-clicking on the text field and dragging it into an area beneath the class declaration line. Well, there's the text field. Remember, we can get to it by just regularly clicking on it like this. We can do that. Or we can come over to here where it says enter text field and do it like that also. All right. And even if I want, I can do it from here. I can hold down on the control key, click on my touchpad, and drag over from here all the way to right there. All right. And it comes up, and naturally it says it wants to put in an outlet. We've already seen this. We want outlet, view controller. We want this to be called temp text. We want this to be UI text field and that to be weak. Now if I click connect, it's added my variable right there. You know this now as well as I do, that what I just did was I added it from, I went from here to there, but I didn't have to do that. I could have also gone from right here. All right. Repeat the steps and establish an outlet for the label object called result label. So let's do that one from here. So we'll click on the label, hold down on the control key, hold down on the touchpad, and I'm going to drag right below my other variable that I just created. That again is an outlet, and we want this to be called result label. We want this to be a UI label and to be weak. And there is our second IB outlet. All right. Next, we need to establish the action that will be called when the user touches the convert button in our user interface. The steps to declare an action in the assistant editor are essentially the same. So this is yet another way, all right, that we're able to do this. So what I'm going to do right now is there are my variables. There's my view did load, and there's my did receive memory warning. All right. They want us to put it beneath the view did load, so they want us to put it in here. So I'll open up some area there, and now I'm going to click on the button. You've seen this kind of thing before. Again, I'm going to hold down on the control key and down on my touchpad, and I'm going to drag down to here. All right, and let go. Now notice that by default, it wants to create another outlet. But this time we are creating an action rather than an outlet, so we want to change the connection type from outlet to action. Okay? We want to name this convert temp. And we want to make sure two things. First of all, he uses any object here, which I think is bad programming practice. So I'm going to change that to a UI button, even though that's not the way that it's done in the book. And then for the event, they say double check and make sure that it says touch up inside, and under arguments it has sender. Then we can click on connect, and that created our IB action for us. Under this IB action, they want us to put the code that's shown on page 123. If let Fahrenheit let me do this too. I'm gonna remove this so I can space this out. So I've got them about half and half now. Should be able to. There we go. Okay. All right. So if let Fahrenheit equal double, all right, so we are casting temp text dot text with an exclamation point. Let Celsius equal Fahrenheit, whoopsie, minus 32 divided by 1.8. They're just doing a simple temperature formula here. And then let result text equal Celsius and finally set our result label dot text equal to result text. All right. And the author mentions here also, it says, before we proceed, it's a pretty good idea to pause and explain what is happening in the above code, even though I think you already know what it is. All right, it says, in this file, we are implementing a convertTemp method, a template that was created for us by the assistant editor. This method takes a single argument, a reference to the sender. The sender is the object that triggered the call, the button object in our case. The author says it was declared as being of type any object. He said this is a special type which can be used to represent any type of class. It says we won't be using this object in our current example, but it can be used to create a general purpose method in which behavior of the method changes depending on how, in other words, which object for which it was called. We could, for example, create two buttons named convert to Fahrenheit and convert to Celsius respectively, each of which calls the same convert to temp method. The method would then access the sender object to refer to which button triggered the event and perform the appropriate or corresponding type of unit conversion. Within the body of the method, we use the dot notation to access the text property, which holds the value of the text displayed in the text field, to access that text. This property is itself an object of type string. This string is converted to type double and assigned a new constant named Fahrenheit. Since it is possible the user has not entered a valid number into the field, maybe they just started and they clicked it, but they didn't put a value in there at all. The use of optional binding, that's that exclamation point that we see there, is employed to prevent an attempt to perform the conversion on invalid data. Having extracted the text entered by the user and converted it into a number, we then perform the calculation to Celsius and store the result in another constant named Celsius. Next, we create a string object and initialize it with text comprising the word Celsius, and we append to that the result of our calculation. All right, in doing so, we declare another constant named result text. Finally, we use dot notation to assign the new string to the text property of our UI label object so it is displayed to the user. Now that pretty much is it, but I will just say before we're going to go on, because there's still a page or two to go, everybody who is watching this tape should be able to look at this code and really and truly it should make sense to all of you. There's not a lot in here, period. All right, building and running the finished app. From within Xcode, they want us to run it and try to enter in a temperature. I always like to save first, you know that, so I'm going to save, and I'm going to go and build it. Now, I have not built any projects on my own machine in a bit, so this may take a while as it goes through and does this. Sometimes it comes up really fast. Sometimes literally it takes 10 to 15 minutes. My build succeeded. I'm going to try using the same thing that they show in the book. It looks like we want to put a 10 in there for the temperature, and then hopefully what will happen is in the label. So we're going to put a 10 in here, and hopefully in the label right here it'll say Celsius equals 12.22222 and a bunch of 2s. After we get that, and hopefully after we get to that point, we'll go in and put in the code to hide the keyboard, which is shown on 124 and 125, and that will finish this particular lesson. So let's read through while this is hopefully working along its merry way here. In section 16.6, again on the bottom of half of page 124 and the top of page 125. The final step in this application implementation is to add a mechanism for hiding the keyboard. Ideally, the keyboard should withdraw from view, in other words, just disappear, when the user touches the background view or taps the return key on the keyboard. To achieve this, we will begin by implementing the touches began event handler method on the view controller. So we're going to put that in first. All right, and we'll just put in there temptext.endEditing true. That means when the background view is touched by the user, the keyboard will now be hidden. The next step then will be to hide the keyboard when the return key is tapped. To do this, as mentioned on the bottom of 124, we'll display the assistant editor and control drag from the text field to a position beneath the viewDidLoad method, and then we will establish an action, and we'll name it text field return. And we'll make sure that the event for which we do that is the did end on exit. If that confuses you, it's the same picture that's shown in figure 1612 on page 125. Then we will locate that stub of a method we just put in and key in sender.resignFirstResponder. Then they mention this is the middle of page 125. We are making a call to the resignFirstResponder method of the object that triggered the event. The first responder is the object with which the user is currently interacting. In this case, the virtual keyboard. Save the code and build and run the app. When the app starts, select the text field so that the keyboard disappears. Touch either an area of the background or tap the return key to verify that indeed the keyboard did disappear. Now this isn't doing diddly, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to stop the simulator and start it up again. Sometimes that works. All right, so I'm going to run that again. Yeah, I get that. Run that again. Again, remember, you have all of the code samples that are shown in this book. I have no problem if with what I've been working on with the playground. If somebody wants that, I can put that out there. You'll have to let me know. I don't know why you would. You should be able to recreate all that by yourselves. Probably would be a good test for you, so to speak, to have you do that by yourselves as well. And again, that once we get this done, that will get us to Chapter 18, which starts in the book on page 131. If there's time, I doubt if there will be, but if there's time between now and the time we come back, what I'd like to do would be to go back in and go between chapters 18 through 24, which is on auto layout, and 25 and 26, which is on storyboards. I'd like to go through that. That's going to be about 60 pages or so of information, and I'd like to do that. And if we can do that, that would just give us some more stuff that's already done, so to speak, before the semester starts. But with my classes for spring, I haven't done much yet on the Android, and I still want to go back and do some more on the jQuery AngularJS book that we have. So, hoping that something comes up in here eventually. And I'll tell you what, while that sits there and thinks about it, let's go do the rest of the stuff that they talk about. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to put in the code that's shown on the bottom of page 124. Override func touches began, not touches bean, touches began, touches set All right, so that part is done. Well, it says there isn't one of these. So let's double check and make sure I did it correctly. Override, func, touches began, touches set, UI touch with event, event, UI event. Well, let's try it without the word override in it. See if we get an error message still. All right. Not sure what the problem is right there. But we'll go on. The next step is to hide the keyboard. To do this, display the Assistant Editor, Control drag from the text field to below the ViewDidLoad method. All right. We want this to be an action. We want it to be called text field return. We want it to be they want it to stay any object. I've already told you my problems with that, so I'm going to change it like this. Okay, click connect. That set that up here for us. And I want to say sender dot resign first responder. Oops. That takes care of that. Okay. All the code is done, but for some reason it doesn't like override, and it doesn't like it when I don't put in override. Ah, missing a question mark there. Did that change anything? Yes, it did. Okay. Now let's go back and see if we've got anything in here yet. We don't. Well, that isn't really very good news. Quit simulator. All right, I've got all my code put in here now, though, so I'm going to do a file, save, and I'm going to try to one more time come in here and build this and run it. And we'll see if it works. If it doesn't, I don't want to waste my time. I surely don't want to waste your time. So what I will do is just call it a period then. I'll give this a couple minutes. So I'm going back into the simulator here. And I'll give this just a couple minutes. And I will refill my water while we're waiting. Well, again, I don't know what the problem on this is. I have no idea why it's not showing anything. This is just really strange as far as I'm concerned. This is the longest it's ever taken to do anything like this. So I don't have a clue as to what the problem is. It's building right away. It's going to the simulator, but it's just nothing is loading in the simulator, so I don't know what the problem with that is. I'm going to assume that it's okay the way that it is. I will keep this, and if I do go on and do chapters 18 through 27, hopefully, eventually, this will run and this will show under the simulator, and if it does, I'll be able to run it and show you indeed what this is supposed to look like. Well, there's my label. There's my convert, so maybe it was there all along. All right. My thing doesn't say enter temperature, though. I don't know what happened to that. There we go. So we were supposed to put in here, what, 10? Well, this isn't. This is very strange. I'm not, when I click in here, I'm not getting the keyboard up. There it is. All right, so I guess it was here all the time. So 10, I think part of it too is what I've got this set to. So let's double check that. Click convert. Celsius, negative 22.22. Okay, that's a good sign. Let's stop the simulator. Let's go back in here. We've got it set to an iPhone 6 Plus. I don't know why that would be that big, but let's change it to an iPhone 5. Okay, let's save it and let's run it again. You did see, hopefully, that I got the, I did have in there the right numbers, etc., as were shown in the book. So that's good that that was working. The only thing I wanted to verify, and I should have verified it just a second ago, but unfortunately I did not, was when I clicked off of the keyboard. So if I clicked in some blank area of the screen, that the keyboard disappeared, or when I clicked the return key, that the keyboard did indeed disappear. So I believe I've got all the code in there and all the code is correct. Again, everyone who's in the class should now be able to run this program, write this program, and also should be able to understand what virtually everything in this program means. But I think the time has come for me to stop, for now, working on the iOS stuff and start to work on the Android stuff. So, again, that's going to take a while. So I'm just going to stop right here.